Welcome to the Evolving Church of Science. That's, I think, where we are now. This is Dr. Gene Mesco with Mostly Hairless Apes. But we just signed up for the Evolving Church of Science. I've been recruited. I've been evangelized. I believe, brothers and sisters. Can I get an amen? This is beautiful. It's a beautiful thing. When you have the revelation of religion, which can be achieved in a restaurant in Marathon Key with two friends. But when you have the realization of what the world is run by, you get it. You go, okay, it's religion, it's belief. Belief is the fundamental key. And this is what's so frustrating as a scientist. And I consider myself a scientist. I don't consider myself a very good scientist. But I have a few skills, and I'm respectable. I made a living. I got a retirement. I must have been doing something right. Some people call me doctor. But the whole deal is I was a professional. I was compensated, and I've got a pretty good life. And I think the way to that really good life is through this stuff we call science. Because science, I'm sorry for every scientist who still professes a belief in any of the traditional religions or even the untraditional religions. Anyone who says, I believe there's a specific magical power out there embodied in some form that is recognizable by my church, and they call him or her Jesus or Gaia or Allah or Bernie or... Now, in my world, Questicon and Zolzar are real, but that's my religion. And that's the beautiful thing about religion. It's a delusion. It's a marvelous delusion that you set up for yourself. And once you've embraced that illusion, that delusion, that you've said, I don't care. I'm going to use this as my excuse for all of this stuff because I don't know, because I can't think of it. Because that's what you get into if you're a scientist. That's how I know I'm a scientist. Because I keep asking questions. That's all an artist or a scientist does. Artists do it so that they can create something, communicate something. We'll talk about that later. I'm not an artist. But maybe a little bit. Everybody's got a little bit of art in them. Everybody creates. But in science... But I've done in science, too, more. Definitely 60-40 at least, whatever. 40% of them might be artists. My kids might disagree. But then, that's all there is, man. The church is the revelation. Once you believe, it's ecstatic. That's a religious ecstasy. That's an orgasm. It's a mental orgasm. It is the synthesis of ideas. So think about it. You have questions. Everybody has questions. But when there's too many questions and not enough answers, you get confused. And that's the thing. You're trying to direct behavior. So as you're running synaptic connections around your cortex, and synapses are firing in specific patterns to activate different neural networks that generate representations based on the sensory input, the sight, cells, smells, sounds, tastes of whatever. You've built those memories over a lifetime. They are wired into your neural circuitry. You now activate whatever the module is that we call consciousness. And consciousness is self. It's me. I'm self-aware. And I think I have some degree to act based on whatever shit I can think up in the universe. Now, obviously, it's going to be restrained by physical and social parameters. And that's the point. We still don't know what free will and self-awareness is. We don't know what consciousness is. But I'd like to find out. And the only way we're going to find out is if we do the research. And the only way we can do the research is if you people all stop fucking around with your religious beliefs and embrace the evolving church of science. That's what I'm talking about. And that means if anybody comes to you with any explanation, any rationale, that unless they're a close family member that you love dearly, or even love a little bit, but it's anybody in your, then personal doesn't count here. We're talking professional. because that's what's involved, and that's one of the things you have to do to be a fully operating member within the evolving Church of Science. Is you have to be a professional something, and all that means is you do something that supports yourself in your current environment, however your ecosystem works, whatever economy has evolved, of barter, capitalism, whatever, socialism, whatever has evolved in your neck of the woods, you survive. You maintain. That means you're a professional. Minimum rank, you earn the rank of adult human when you do that. When you practice a profession, when you profess to know something better than other people, by demonstrating it, and you get compensated for that, such that your resources keep you alive, you're a professional. And even at the most basic level, you might just be a professional human in terms of staying alive, which is a cool thing. We want that in our species members. We don't want to go extinct. That's the only goal of the evolving Church of Science. Is the only thing we want to do is keep humans alive as much as possible, so that they can pursue their happiness. We want to ensure the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness of every human that we can, with an optimization of resources based on that principle. So we use our resources to promote the most diverse human population we can and take over the universe. We become the dominant species doing something out here on this wing, the Orion arm of the Milky Way galaxy, as we spin through space and time, as meager, evolved, mostly hairless apes, stumbling through reality. What are we going to do? We are going to live, hopefully. We're not going to die. Because that's what a biologist tells you. And biology is the current shell of our scientific knowledge. The knowledge is a subset of information. Knowledge can be shared between humans who trust each other, because if we trust each other, that means we define the same things as true. And once we trust each other, then we can share knowledge, because then we can say, oh, I know this to be true. I don't have to keep it a secret from you because I think you might be an enemy spy or just a scumbag or somebody who wants to steal something. Whatever I think of you, I either trust you or I don't. And if I trust you, I'll share information with you. I might give you knowledge that actually affects the real world, because that's what knowledge is. Knowledge is our information about how to react with reality. And reality is understandable is best understood through science. That's what physics and chemistry and biology have given us over the last few centuries, is the knowledge of how reality works at a subatomic level. They've taken us down to a subatomic level. They can go down and dig through matter and space and energy and time and find fundamental particles and forces. And they don't know how to describe them after that. I can give you a few. We could talk quarks, leptons, photons, neutrons, all of that good stuff. We could talk about all of those particles. So a little bit. I had to take some physics classes. I'm a fucking PhD from a real university. I had to take a few science classes. What killed me was cellular neurophysiology. I knew I was dead when two electrical engineers walked in. I've had a love-hate relationship with engineering. That was my first college major, actually, and I flunked out mostly because I was partying. Because I seen Animal House the summer before I went to college, and then I thought, oh, this is how we're supposed to behave. Okay, I get it, which was very different than what I grew up with, which is a whole other story. But in the process of going to college and learning things and acquiring knowledge and getting a job and learning skills with the application of knowledge and technology, and then going on for more college and learning different skills and learning different pieces of technology and how to use these things and manipulate reality, was an amazing ride. It was a fucking amazing ride. and I would recommend it to anybody. And I'm surprised I'm not dead. Because just lots of stuff's happened along the way. And some of it could have gone bad. You never know. You get pretty close sometimes. So, whatever it is, if you're not riding the edge, if you're not pushing it to the limit, then what the fuck are you here for? Why are you here? That's the other thing we want. And we want people who have a problem. In the evolving Church of Science, we want people who have a problem. Because a standard church greeting, one of the standard church greetings I think that we should adopt is, what's your problem? And what's your problem in the Church of Evolving Science means, what are you working on? What are you creating? What are you trying to solve? What information are you trying to dig out of reality? What truth are you trying to synthesize at the social level with the creation of art? What is it that you're doing that is a net benefit to humanity at this point in our existence? Because if we ask that question of anyone, you'll either get an answer which you can appreciate or one that you won't. Somebody could say they're just doing maintenance. Yeah, I fixed the potholes. Fucking A, dude. You are the man. You go out in highway traffic and you deal with hot. I knew a guy who had a job as a hot tar roofer. He worked that one day and he said it was fucking miserable. That's not quite road work, but yeah, they're out there in the heat and the smog, and they're doing the job. At this point in our history, so much of our world just needs maintenance, and we need people who can do the maintenance. So fucking A, if you're a maintenance worker, oh, that's who we love. The first responders, we should all be first responders. Everybody ought to know first aid. This is ridiculous. That's a basic function. Somebody's bleeding, you ought to be able to know how to stop the bleeding. Just stabilize. That's all everybody should have that freaking information. How to stop somebody from bleeding, how to deal with a few basic common illnesses or injury symptoms. That's fucking basic information that everybody should have, which is why we should have public education. There's a set of skills that everybody should know. And what are they? We should vote on them. We vote on them, and then we say, this is it. We're going to try these for a while. And that's the thing. So something like education, we should vote in 20-year policies and then tweak them as we go. Or something. 20-year policies, because what do we want to cover in 20 years? We could reduce it, and then we could get tracks of children, however we're going to do the competition. Because we're always going to have competition. But at the family level, we should share information. We should say, hey, we tried this, and Timmy works with this, or I heard about this, or I read about this. And we help each other out. That's the deal. We have a bunch of kids, and the village raises them. Yeah, the fucking village. And whether you like it or not, it's a fact of reality. We're all influenced by more than our parents. We operate in a community. That's the basic package of humanity. We're social primates. And because we're social primates, we socialize. We hang out in neighborhoods. We hang out in cul-de-sacs. We hang out in bars. We hang out at clubs. We hang out in offices. We hang out in churches. We hang out in church basements. Because that's where the food is, usually. We all have to socialize. That's why church wins. That's why belief wins. Because ultimately, we all lack of knowledge. At some point, we all lack ignorance. That's the beauty of creating a God who's all-knowing. And maybe somebody has the answers. Maybe he'll tell me eventually. Oh, if you pray hard enough, if you meditate long enough, if you do so many sacrifices, we can talk to the big guy. That's what creates. You gotta go back to indulgences. That was the crack in the armor. That's where they fucked up. That is where they fucked up. They came out and out blackmail. Out and out fucking blackmail. They said for cash money. That was the deal with indulgences. That's what corrupted the system. That's what split the economy off. And everybody realized it was a different idea because cash money was useful. It was local though. Everybody in the kingdom only had cash money for them. They'd forgotten what the Greeks and the Romans had done, had built empires, they had old coins. Because Europe was in the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages just means, wouldn't mean they're stupid, they weren't doing things, they're obviously staying alive, but not much changed. It's not worth putting light on that part. We can darken it out on the graph because what happened was just really the consolidation of several of the major aspects of society that we've evolved as our basic mechanism in Western civilization. Is that there's a singular authority figure at the head of the church, at the head of the state. Boom. That was it. And the economy was local. There was no gold. There was no big currency. There was gold and there was stuff like that, but coins. The coin of the realm. Why do people talk about the coin of the realm? Because the coins were different in every realm. If you changed places, you had to change currencies. That's why the only people who could travel initially were royals, where people had something to trade. As you wandered into somebody's territory, you better be able to talk shop. You got to talk deals. And so the economy was basically a barter economy between local jurisdictions. And people, we've had coins for 5,000 years. But they've never done anything more than go local, just because of the physics. It's physically heavy to carry coins. If somebody amasses more than a few gold chests worth, people are going to start trying to sneak some out. It's hard to keep track of more than a few chests of gold and the coins that might be in them. And so the whole idea of coinage and of currency is that you've got a capital, you've got something that you can say, I've got something that's worthwhile. You've just disembodied. You've created an idea. That's the beauty of currency. Because that's really the realm we're all working with. And we're all working with information. Information is what the Evolving Church of Science tells us is the coin of the realm for evolution. If evolution's real, if you believe in modern science, and accept that there's probably not any God out there, sure, you can believe one, but we're not going to listen to anything about your God. That's social. You don't do that somewhere else. Anything that's professional doesn't get a God. This is why we need to define the professionals. Professional preachers will acknowledge that. If you are a professional preacher, you can declare yourself to be a businessman, and you're dealing with the idea of God, unless you have evidence to the contrary. If you can show us with stuff that would stand up in a court of law or under scientific investigation by multiple sources with peer review, standard processes, if you can have evidence to that level, then we'll look at different rules, because that means your God is something real. But I don't believe in gods other than Questicon and Zolzar. Those are my gods. But that's the deal. We all have our own gods. Everybody has their own image. That's what the Muslims got right. They changed the rules. They said you can't have an image of God. There's got to be, you got to think of one on your own. You got to make your own deity. You have to walk your own moral path. That's the true guidance of any wisdom source. That's the best guidance I think any of us can extract from any belief system. Is that, all right, enough of this information makes sense in a consistent and logical manner. This is probably how reality works. And because this is how reality works, I'm going to work with the information I have. And that information is going to be whatever we learn about, whatever we can find out about our environment, what everybody tells us, everything we read, everything we see, all of that, everything we feel, all of that information comes in and tells us things. And into our brain, whatever our self is, whatever that little avatar inside of our brain is, that's sitting there, and that little avatar can do whatever it wants. It can say, I'm going to start doing this. And here's that avatar has an interface with reality. It's called our voice, which is why vocal communication is so important, because that operates a consistent portion of the brain. That's going to keep us unified as a species, or the people you can talk to. That's the wisdom of the parable of the Tower of Babel. Babbling comes from the Tower of Babel. Read your goddamn Bibles. The Bible was never meant to be taken factually. It's a book of wisdom, like other books of wisdom. And the trick is to extract the wisdom, learn the parables, understand the stories, and what was happening. Why was Judas unfaithful? Was he thought he was being faithful, but he lost it. I don't know. Everybody makes mistakes. It's okay. You can still be in the kingdom of heaven. Now, that's the deal. That's why we talk about like that in religions, because the whole thing is all about a state of mind. It's an idea. You have to, and that's what you have to do to figure out your problem. That's what Questicon shows you when you embrace Questicon as your deity. She'll come to you, or he'll come to you, or they'll come to you, however you want to create Questicon. I have my own vision, and it involves celebrities that I cannot discuss at this point in time. But Questicon manifests herself and talks to me, and I exchange communication with her, and I'm able to create a second avatar. That's the beautiful thing about religion. We're talking about talking to God. What you're doing is creating a second avatar. And this is how you can go insane, because then you can have a split personality. You might become Schmeagol. You got to keep it together, though. And that's the beauty of religion, though. It gives you a unifying principle. It says, no, this is my reality. I've got this reality, all these people that are around me that I like, that I love, these places that I work and live and play, and I'm happy with my life. But if it's not, if you can't say that, then you have to figure out what's the problem. And that's your problem. That's the one thing you need to fix. Right? You got to work within, I would advise working within the legal boundaries of whatever municipalities you reside in. I would advise going about it very scientifically, how to solve your problem. Think about it. Stop for a second and just fucking think. That's the truth. That's who we are. We are Homo sapiens. We are wise humans. And supposedly we're thinking humans. We can solve problems with our brain. That was the bold choice that early paleontologists and archaeologists and anthropologists and all the early biologists who were looking at the bones and looking at the histories and looking at Darwin's theory and looking at all this stuff and going, what the fuck? What are we going to do? And luckily, the astronomers had already broken through the one reality boundary. They had pushed through, along with Martin Luther, the idea that the Pope wasn't infallible, that the Pope wasn't directly wired to God. And Martin Luther put up his theses on the door in Germany somewhere. I forget where, Hamburg? I don't remember. But once they put those up, he said, F you to the Pope. See, this is what most people don't appreciate about Catholicism. At its best, Catholicism is willing to say, hey, we fucked up. Yeah, the Pope is not infallible. People make mistakes. Priests make mistakes, but they can't admit that. That's the problem with the church. In today's church. I mean, any church worth its salt should be able to say, hey, we're only humans here, and this is our idea. This is what we think reality is. That Jesus Christ, our Lord, came down and took da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. The Lord spoke to Allah in a cave. Yada 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 yada. Abraham was asked to kill his own son. Yada 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 yada. And there's plenty of yada yadas out there. There's more than enough yada yadas to go around. But now what you've got is this ridiculous pastiche of languages and cultures and ideas. But the one that unifies us, this is what science taught me. This is why it was such a great ride. Science teaches you, because you end up working, if you get high enough in science, there's only a few people doing that. There's only a few people doing XYZ. Looking at, I got into Alzheimer's, is how I rode my horse that I rode in on, because they were throwing enough money around that there was extra money to train people, which is how science grew. We solve a problem. That's why that's the assignment. That's the only commandment. Are you working on your problem to the best of your ability? That's all anybody can ask of us. It's your problem, and if you don't have any problems, then great. Then what the fuck are you bothering me? Whatever else might be going on. But that's all the church says. The Evolving Church of Science wants you as a member. Because what we want is for everybody to be a member. We want everybody on the planet to be a member. Now, just for fun, of course, we would recommend using scientific principles to organize your groups. That means social groups on the order of about 150 to 200 people on average. That's what we estimate from Aboriginal studies and archaeological and paleontological studies and all of that fun stuff that we do, sociological and psychological, all of that fun science stuff that we do. See, this is the beauty of that evolution. Once you embrace the idea that humans are evolving social primates, that we're mostly hairless apes, who have come down a long branching history of life, going back to cellular organisms over 3 billion years ago. And you say that physics and chemistry are not insignificant, biology is not insignificant, psychology, sociology, all of it becomes important, because if we've got data, we can understand things, and we can understand how sometimes people act like animals, because science says we are animals. Of course, we're going to behave the same way, because that's what evolution tells us. Now, what it also says is we're different. We're our own species. We're our own specific type of life form. Homo sapiens. The thing that differentiates us is we can make rules. We can make up these ideas. We've captured information in the mental realm of our brains. We've created the avatar of self. However we did it, I don't know how we did it. God's there. God could be down in there. It doesn't matter. All it says is that it generates one point of morality. The only point of morality relevant to the Evolving Church of Science is we should optimize human survival, to however you see fit. I mean, if you think only some people should be surviving, you're going to run into conflict, because somebody else is going to stand up with those people, or they're just going to stand up on their own. So nobody wants to die. So that'll be something else we'll deal with. We'll deal with war and conflict later. But you can't be, because you're not going to be a member of the church. We're going to figure out how to deal with you, how to talk to you, how to communicate with you. Because as of right now, we're at war. Because that's the only people I'd be at war with. I would be at war, but a declared state of war with anyone who didn't believe that the shared reality that's best interpreted by natural sciences on our planet is the best way to start any conversation about government. And if you disagree with that, I can't live with you. I can't work with you. If you think some deity should be the one that your idea, we have to take your word for it, that whoever you're talking about is real. If you think that's a way to move forward, we're never going to get anywhere. We have to go back to a disembodied set of knowledge, of information that's been accumulated over centuries, and then maybe we can start making some progress.